Welcome to Civil Discourse. I'm Marilyn Brown.
And I'm Jayme Wojciechowski.
And today we are discussing a quote. So, Jamie, why don't you go ahead and share the quote with us?
Sure. The quote is, "Prayer is when we ask the universe or something we believe to be bigger than ourselves for something. And meditation is when we stop and listen."
Hmm.
Yeah. I thought of this quote because I often get asked about uh, the relationship between religion and mindfulness practice, specifically, mostly from uh, Christians or mostly Christians asking if they can practice mindfulness meditation or if it will conflict with their beliefs. So what are your thoughts? I have very strong thoughts on it, but
Yeah,
I'll let you
yeah.
go first.
It's interesting because this has actually come up for me recently, and it comes up in my work often, being a therapist and working with clients, and also introducing people to mindfulness and meditation as a part of my practice. It's something that definitely comes up, and I get asked this question a lot as well. And um, I don't believe that there's any conflict. I think that meditation is actually something that can support, that is supportive of whatever spiritual practice you already engage in. And so, like, if I have a client that I'm newly working with and they're Christian and attend church regularly, and then I talk to them about meditation, there's a kind of a fear of, like, is this, are you teaching me a different religion? I think people link meditation to Buddhism. And so a lot of times people are like, are you teaching me a different, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, like, belief system? And I think, unfortunately, that's based on a lot of conditioning that we've all received over the years. I think that taking time to get quiet and sit in stillness is actually something that, again, can really support your spiritual practice. And so, like, I've used the quote before, and I don't think that it's my own, but I also don't know who said it, that prayer is talking to God, and that meditating is listening for the answers. Um, and so, yeah, so I think that allowing yourself that time to be still and to really get quiet is something that can actually really deepen someone's connection to their spiritual practice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I
I
I always struggle with giving the answer to this because I have my own biases, of course, but I always want to respond in a mindful way. And I think the problem is that mindfulness practice in itself, and when you talk about meditation, like we always say, is a tool. So for me, when people ask, is it going to conflict, or is it a different belief system, or is it a different religion? My response is it depends on how you use it, right? Because
Right. Sure.
uh, I think if you just take kind of meditation out of its Buddhist Buddhist origins, Hindu origins, then yes, you can absolutely uh, use it to just enhance whatever religion or spiritual practice you have, because that's going to be your intention. You're going to kind of use it to do that. Um, but I think if you do a deep dive into mindfulness practice as it was originally intended, I think there will be conflict. And what I say is, I don't think I don't think there's necessarily conflict in that it's going to say what you already believe is wrong. I think when you deep dive into mindfulness, you get to a point where it challenges everything you believe.
Right.
Because it's causing you to experience the world in a way you've never experienced it before. So to say that, no, it's not going to conflict, I feel I don't feel comfortable telling people that, just because it's conflicted with everything in my life at some point, because it's completely reshaped my worldview. So it's very much changed the way I see spirituality and religion. Yet my religion hasn't changed, if that makes sense.
Right.
So
yeah, I think that's interesting, and I definitely think that, like, I would agree with that as well, that it for me, it definitely has challenged my beliefs in everything, and really kind of challenged me to, like, evolve my beliefs. But I also think, I guess that would be conflict. I guess for me, like, I just don't see that as conflict, but that's because I'm seeking that, like, change in belief. So I could see how someone who is comfortable with what they already know and believe to be true around, spirituality and religion, that evolution in beliefs, or that change in beliefs, would feel like a conflict. Yeah, I could see that for sure.
I think too.
Go ahead.
Good. I think too, with conflict, it's just, for a lot of people, conflict's a negative. But I think as you embrace mindfulness, you stop seeing it as a negative and see it as a positive, as a way to enhance your journey. So that's the other problem, is when people ask me about it, I'm like, well, if I explain it to you now without having experienced it, you're going to have an idea of it that isn't what you're going to experience. Right. So it's hard to verbalize what it is in relationship to Christianity or Judaism or whatever it is. Because I know people who practice mindfulness, Buddhist mindfulness, for decades and are devout Christians. And I know people who are Christians and practice Buddhist meditation for a few weeks and totally abandoned Christianity and became full-fledged Buddhists. So it's I think everyone's different based on, because no one experiences, even if you're talking about a religion like Christianity, no one person experiences the religion the same way. So to say, like, no, it's going to not conflict, or yes, it's going to conflict, I mean, I know well enough that I don't know that for sure, so I would never tell someone, like, yes or no.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think that it's interesting because, like, I think about my grandmother, who was, like, if you could, like, there was, like, a scale of, like, devoutness for, like, Christians, like, and she's, like, Christian and Catholic, like, up in the, like, highest scale of devout you could be. She went to mass every single day. She dedicated her life to serving the community and through the church, and brought a lot of people to the Catholic religion, got a lot of kids into Catholic school in the community in Chicago, and just really, really, that was her life's work, and that was her, like, life's belief system. And she also meditated every single day. And it's something that, like, a lot of people didn't really know. And my mother, said growing up, she would always, just kind of know when her mom was meditating, and that was her quiet time and not to come in. But it's interesting because she was aware of the power of it. It's like, I wish I could talk to her about this. She passed away before I was born, but, like, she was aware of the power of meditation and the importance of that practice, but that wasn't something that she passed on to everyone around her like she did the Catholic faith and the Catholic religion. And so like she didn't teach my mom to meditate, even though it's something that she did every day. And I guess for me, it just kind of creates these questions of like, you know, how I don't think that her meditation ever, I mean, maybe it did conflict with her beliefs, but it didn't conflict with her beliefs enough to like change how she, you know, lived her life. But it's just kind of interesting of like, how do you put those two things together? And I don't have any answers, just lots of questions and curiosity around it. Because I do think that, like you said, it's a very personal experience, and practicing mindfulness and meditation is a very personal experience, and how you experience it is. And I think that like there's a way to integrate it into what works for you, and into your life. But you're right, it could completely change how you move in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not a Christian, would not label myself a Christian in any way, but when I was leading a mindfulness group a few years ago, there was this older lady who would come every week and just was very quiet, would sit through the meditation, but never really spoke up, because I always gave people an opportunity to ask questions or to share whatever they wanted to share about the mindfulness journey. She never said anything. And after a few months, she finally like raised her hand to say something, and she said something along the lines of, I don't remember word for word, but she said that she was a Christian, and what she struggles with her whole life is that she always felt bad when she prayed, because she always was asking for something, and she didn't know how to pray without feeling like she was asking for something.
Yeah.
And I had said like, well, why do you feel like you are always asking for something when you pray? And she basically said like, well, you're talking to God, and if I'm going to take up his time, like I feel like, you know, you want to say what the world needs or what you need or whatever. And then I had said, and this is before I knew anything about this this kind of quote or this thing, I said, well, what do you feel when you meditate? And she said, well, she took like I remember her taking a pretty long pause, and she goes, I mean, I guess I'm just listening. Like I'm just, I mean, I just listen to what's around me. And then I said, well, does it feel like prayer, or does it feel like something else? And she said, it's what I always wish praying would have felt like. And I had said, well, I think that's one that's it's a perceived notion of what you have put on the word prayer. So I had said, well, why don't you just replace the words, and what you're doing when you meditate, just call that prayer. And she came back the next week and said she had been to church every day, and it totally changed the way she viewed it all, and felt much more in alignment with everything she was doing in her Christian practices and Christian faith. So in that instance, it brought her much closer, because it gave her a new way to experience her faith, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And like I'd love to hear that, because it just, I think when I talk to my clients and I'm like, no, you know, it's fine, like just, you know, sit for 5 minutes after you pray, and, you know, just kind of sit quietly. I think that's kind of what I'm hoping that it does, is create a deeper connection to that prayer experience. That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and I think too, the nice thing about it is, right, it's, unless you're practicing meditation within an organized system, the meditation and the mindfulness practices are just tools. So, and anyone has access to use those tools. You don't have to believe in any specific thing. You don't have to be any religion. You can be an atheist. You can be a Christian. You could be whatever. It doesn't matter. They're just tools unless you're doing it within an organized
Right.
Buddhist Hindu system, and then it's part of that system. There's a quote I love, but also have had a lot of problems with because I think it hints at something, but in of itself it's not fully mindful. And it talked about theism basically being the belief that there is someone or something out there that's going to protect you, right? That's going to be there for you, that controls it all.
Yep.
And non-theism is the being comfortable with the fact that there will be no one to catch you when you fall. And what I find non-mindful about that quote is creating the duality between theism and non-theism. But what I love about the quote is that I do think it's almost like faith or belief is the idea that there will be something there to protect you. And then when you do your mindfulness practice, I think that's learning to be comfortable with the fact that there is nothing there to save you or protect you. And I think both of those things can be true at the same time. I don't think it needs to be one or the other.
Right. Yeah, that I've never really thought about it that way, but that I like that idea, because then you're able to hold both of those things and there's not really a conflict. You can still have strong faith and also have an awareness that like the acceptance of like the now, the acceptance of like the reality of where things are right now. Well, do we have homework for this one?
I don't know. I think nothing I think people need to share. I would just like people to kind of reflect on the quote, and I'll say it again. Prayer is when we ask the universe or something we believe to be bigger than ourselves for something. And meditation is when we stop and listen. So I think just self-reflect on, I guess, where you're at with mindfulness and your spiritual practices or lack thereof.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. We'll see everybody next week.
See you guys next week.